Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. Hopefully, this is going live. My loading bar moved a lot slower than it typically does, but it looks like we are live now. Officially, I'm Jack Greenstock, your host for another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. This is episode 377. Tonight, we're going to be doing chat, question, and answer live. But first, I'm going to introduce my panel, starting with Dr. MJ.
Hey, everybody. Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I also do consulting work in the commercial grow space at drmjcoco.com. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you all again this week.
Pleasure to have you back. Next up, we've got Spartan Grow.
I was double muted, sorry. Thank you, Jack. I am Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. And if you don't do Instagram, you can shoot me an email, spartangrown@gmail.com, and I can help you with all your growing or lighting questions.
Hopefully, we get some of those growing or lighting questions tonight. It looks like we've got a pretty active chat already rolling, dozens of people popping in and saying cheers, hello, and whatnot. But now's your time to think up and maybe type out some questions for us to answer throughout the show. And last and certainly not least of my panelists currently with us this evening is Noah the Grower. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Noah the Grow on Instagram. I've been growing cannabis for a little bit and happy to be here. You can find me on Instagram or you can find me here most weeks and ready to get into it.
You just mentioned that you've gotten back from across the pond. I didn't know if you wanted to share at all about that for a little bit. I'm going to let Tao load in here for a second, but maybe you could give us a little update. Did you get to experience any of the cannabis scene at all while you were there, or did you have to kind of stay dry? Or were you able to link up with anybody over?
Well, allegedly, somehow I found a cart with us, and I have in Minecraft, I have a little system that has worked, and we brought one with us, and my wife had it in her fanny pack, and we lost it, but there was a certain route that we would take from the little, they call them villages we were staying in, and we were going to the train station to go to York and Leeds and all over the place. And a couple days later, we found it, and that was a really big boom to us. But it was the cannabis scene was very quiet, if not more very subdued. There was a lot of people in the pubs that were trying to drink beer, and and I had a couple beers, but the cannabis scene was much more subdued, and we were very thankful that we found our cart and. That was how like I said, we found one when we got there, and then when we lost it, we found it again. So
Sounds like it was a good trip, if not a little hectic at times when you misplaced the goodies there. But it doesn't surprise me because we just had Boudica seeds on last week from the UK, and they're not able to show their face because the legalities or illegalities of growing the plant and or making the seed versus possessing the seed or selling the seed itself. So interesting to see that they're still, you know, I would say sort of black market, unregulated market, red, a lot of red tape and illegalities around it, which is not the most fun. That's why I asked, because I know traveling it can be a little bit difficult, but we do have some gromies out there. Maybe next time, if you do ever go back, reach out ahead of time and hopefully somebody can hook you up like Boudica Seeds or somebody else over there. I know Green 13 and many others, lots of cool people in the cannabis scene in the UK, but I know Doc also just did a little bit of traveling as well. And I'm curious to know if you had any more thoughts. I saw you unmute there for a second about your trip before we move on.
I was just gonna say the plan is definitely to go back to Europe. I remember some of the panelists. I think Spartan have been to Spain. I'm very jealous of that. Once you have been to another country, this is my first time being out of the United States, besides like Canada when I was a kid and Mexico and stuff like that. But it's very, very unique. It's a very different. It's very old, and I encourage anybody listening to, if you get a chance to do it, it's very fun. Once in a lifetime. It was great. I had a great time.
I'm glad to hear that, and I generally share that sentiment. I'm looking forward to going back to Italy someday with Lady Greenstock. We both went separately, but want to go back together. And I know that there's a little bit of home growers' rights there, and some people there's actually some cannabis rights there. So good to see, and hopefully the people are taking advantage of that and building up a community. I'm not sure how strong our following in Italy is. I think we've got like less than 1% of our people are from there, but that's still cool for the couple people that are out there that are listening in Italy. Able to speak
You'd
good
be
enough English.
surprised, man. It's just in the places where it's not so accepted, they're just not out and open about it. But you'd be surprised. I mean, when I went into Spain, when I went to Germany, there's people that still recognize me. So it's like there are definitely people out there.
It is crazy. It's a small world, so to speak. There's only, so many people in this community and in the public facing side of things, especially. And you've been on lots and lots of different shows and gotten yourself around there. So I'm sure a lot of people recognize you, not only from this show, but many others that you've been a part of. And now your work with Grandmaster Lighting and doing that stuff, you're getting into the trade shows and things like that. So getting a lot more exposure in person and online. So I'm happy that people are recognizing you. I had that humbling experience when I was in Vegas and got recognized by Loyalty Gardens, Ty Sticks. He messaged you, and then ultimately I found in my little hidden DMs that he had messaged me as well. He's like, "Hey, are you at Champs Business Conference?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." So we linked up, and he gave me a bunch of really dank homegrown as well as Johnny Caniseed. So shout out to those guys and anybody who recognizes any of us. I know Tao is probably one of the hardest to recognize because he's very rarely shown face on these shows, but respect to that. I know you were also in a sort of, and still are, a space that is more red tape and unregulated market slash not full open legal compliance like many of us are able to just kind of show our face without worry.
Yeah, that's a problem. We got to fix all that. But it never stopped me many years that is was never state legal even. So yeah, I just got to get back. But yeah, I'm glad I made it. Good to see everybody. I hope everybody had a great week.
I forgot I missed your introduction because I asked Noah about his travel right as you were booting in. So I figured maybe Tal, you could let the people know where they can find you and all that good stuff.
That's no big deal. They most of them know, but I am the American one on the YouTube and the American one underscore with underscore Keens on the IG. And yeah, hope everybody's got plants in the ground. And yeah, I don't know about going to other countries though. After I watched that Locked Up Abroad a few times, um, yeah, and me being the American one, I think America has everything to offer that you might want in your life. So
I was going to say earlier, Noah mentioned that was just, he'd been to Canada before, and a lot of us in the United States may have been to Mexico or Canada, considered North America still, right? So it's
there you go.
still,
We
you're
go
in
to
America.
America. We go to Canada and Mexico. Sure.
But I do think going to Europe is sort of an eye-opening
Yeah.
experience for a number of reasons. It's cool to just mix it up and see different cultures and see, some of these older cities that were around since before the United States ever existed in its current context.
Yeah.
Obviously,
That's
the
They
the
natives were
actually
here
biggest.
for tens of
Uh,
thousands of years before us, so
they
I don't want
take
to be
pride in their
remiss.
buildings, not like us. Like we have to bulldoze the Wrigley Field because it doesn't have lights or whatever, and they have things from the 1600s. I think we should have respected some of our architecture a little more, but now we're getting off topic. Sorry.
I mean, there's still hope though. I mean, that's exactly. I mean, I'm going to echo what you guys are saying, echo what Noah was saying, and that's the biggest difference, obviously, besides the language, if it's a country that's different language. But when I went to Europe, that was the biggest difference was the age of things was like to the 10th degree older, not just a little bit older. And and it was amazing because the perfect example, and I'm going to butcher the name, but in Spain they were started building this chapel, La Flem something, whatever. They just finished it recently, and they started it 300 years ago. But it's like so like what Todd was just saying. It's like it's a difference between you could look at like it's something as simple as like a light fixture, or today's day and age, modern day and age. It's just function. Yeah, and there's no beauty or art to it at all. But there, they would something as simple as a light fixture or a window or whatever, a beam, an exposed beam. That was an opportunity to add art, which we don't really see here. So to
That's also
go
why it took 300 years.
Yeah, yeah. So to go
Longer
witness
than we've been
something
a
like
country to
that,
build one
to,
building.
to witness something that somebody put that much time and effort into, and you can see, you can tell it. You can tell
Oh
by
yeah.
looking at it. It's something I think you should see at least once in your life. Even if you make one trip, I do think you should get out of the norm and go somewhere exotic because it really opens your eyes, experience other cultures, talk to the people there, that kind of thing. It just really changes your perspective in life.
I appreciated the lack of air conditioning, a lot of the spaces, and then I saw the opposite when a lot of Europeans came here for the World Cup. They're appreciating the air conditioning, especially in some of the hotter, more humid environments, like Doc was just in when he was traveling. You mentioned that before the show you were just in Mississippi, and it was your first time being there in August, which comes with some heat and humidity. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about living through that, and then how the plant operations and stuff are going over there.
Yeah, this is my longtime client down there. And I've been down there in like January. I've been in the fall and the winter and the spring. I've kind of tried to avoid the summer months down there, but it was hot, it was humid. The facility runs pretty much the same regardless. The biggest difference, I think, in the summer, water temperature can be an issue if you're not prepared to deal with it. There, the water temperature coming off the tap is, in the high 70s now. So it's not suitable for, use at that temperature. You need to kind of chill it. In the winter, it's like the HVAC unit's freezing over because it gets too cold and they're running and they can sort of ice up. But other than those things sort of entering the facility, they're well prepared for the water temperature now. So um it's wild. You like hot and sweltering outside in the sun, and then you walk into the grow facility and there's no windows. It's like it would be in a casino. It's cool. The temperatures and climates are different in all the grow rooms, but like it's pleasant and cool and everything inside there, and sort of a ridiculous amount of power gets thrown at these. I talked to our electrician out there. That facility pulls almost a gigawatt of power. Um, and a
Crazy.
lot of that's in climate control. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was a good trip. They
Not to
just
get you off
installed.
topic, but do they have a backup generator of any sort, like the ones that come in on trailers and you fill up with diesel?
Yes, it's the size of a building. Their backup generator.
I was gonna say they
Nice.
have to be that size for anything
Yeah,
of that
it's
operation. Cities do that
insane.
stuff too. Like they'll do like sometimes battery backups for like their whole entire grid, and it ends up being like semi-trailer loads of batteries like stacked side by side by side by side. And then there's like a solar array that's usually pumping it
Yep.
full, or some water hydro dam or something like that. That yeah, pretty
Yeah,
crazy
it's
stuff.
an interesting power situation. I mean, there's one of the biggest data center projects in the country is going in just down the road from them. And they're using many gigawatts now. One of the reasons that they moved in there was cheap power. They've been running some of the cheapest power in the country, but with this huge new competitor coming in, and the backup generator kicks on periodically. And the grid's a little unstable as it is for the amount of power that we pull on sort of a rural grid, and storms and other things. So it kicks on and keeps the operation going at pretty much 100% capacity. When we were originally designing the facility, I was kind of advocating for a plan to do like, a 50% backup generator, and there would be a protocol, a light and climate protocol for managing the facility at less than full capacity, because it's a huge difference in sort of cost on that side of the capex investment in it. But yeah, there's a huge generator. Anyways, my main purpose of being down there this time was getting this under canopy lighting test kicked off. We're running two tables, half a room in one of the flowering rooms on this row, with quite a bit of under canopy lighting. So been talking to the people at Faven where we got the lights, and they set a plan in terms of dimming percentage and when to turn them on and how to crank them up and all the rest of this. But uh, yeah, it was a lot more light than I was expecting there to be. So I kind of slowed down the roll on that. It'll be interesting. It's much more light than I was expecting. I was measuring at leaf level. Now, these plants, admittedly, are 27 days old. The They were flipped on day 14, so they're just about 2 weeks into flowering. But flipped on day 14, little clones flipped on day 14. You know, you guys are growers, you can imagine how big they are. They're growing pretty fast. We're not growing slow plants, but they're not huge. And they've been topped and they're starting to be trained into the trellis. They're also starting to flower and bolt. But they're not far away. So how you prune them up away from the lights and down there at the levels, I mean, they tried to create sort of like space for the lights and prune up around it. But I was still recording like 1500, 1600 ppfd at
Wow.
the Under-canopy.
Wow.
Yeah, at 70% power. Now
So,
that's
yeah.
like 4 to 6 inches from the light, pretty close to the light,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I think I want to slow the roll even more than that. And certainly by the end of the bolt, there'll be, bigger plants and we can sort of prune further away from the light. And then also give the light more room to spread. But that was kind of the main thing I did with the Under-canopy light was like, we need to slow this down. Like
Yeah, I agree. That sounds like a lot.
to be fair, the plants are loving it. And we set up the room to be mirror images of, so we put 4 strains, one on the front, one on the back of each table,
Okay.
and then mirrored that on the other side of the room
And did
so
you go like
that
your traditional perpendicular with your under canopy lights?
no, we did cross
Okay.
perpendicular. Perpendicular, Faven said, and I believe that sort of the argument that they get better coverage that way, edge to edge and along the table. The other thing, though, that I think more important is when they're kind of daisy chain jump cable down the thing,
Yeah.
you can move
Yeah.
them. You can move each individual light back and forth. And when you're reaching in from the edge of the table, you reach in between lights instead of reaching in over
The
a light
pop-up
to get
lighting.
to plants that are in the middle. And finally, we can put more lights in that way.
Yeah.
We basically be limited to 2 rails going if we went parallel to the table. But we've got 38 rows of plants on the table. So we could put up to 38 lights if we
Wow.
put a light every row,
And
if
have
that
you
makes
noticed too, it's like the how do I want to say it? Like the coverage of your grow glasses has to be so good at the peripherals now, and even the underneath when you are in a room that has under canopy going because it's such a thing to get used to, light coming up at you. It
sense.
is
Yeah,
wild.
it's brighter in there. I mean, it's way brighter in there. And it's interesting to have done it like side by side like this because the side with under canopy lighting, we're leaving more leaves, we're leaving more branches, but it looks like we're leaving fewer because when you look at it from above, you can see through it because you got these lights like blasting up at you. And the other side just looks so darker and denser, even though objectively it's not. It doesn't have lights blasting up at you from underneath. And when you turn the lights off, you can see that pretty clearly. But when the under canopy lights are on, it definitely looks like that side of the room is thinner.
Yeah,
The
it's
lights have been
essentially
on for
like
one
looking, I
week
mean,
now.
if you think about it, it's essentially like going into a room and looking straight up at the grow light because you're looking
Yeah,
down at the grow lights that are going straight up.
yeah. And they really are every bit as strong as that. We're adding about half the wattage to the tables as they are in the overhead lights.
Are you dimming anything on the top then, or are you leaving it?
No, leaving it. In fact, I want to add to the top. The overhead lights have, I mean, they're 4 years old now.
But what is
And
PFD? Are you still getting like 1,000,
in good spot,
2,000?
it's designed for really even coverage, but it's not. There's some gaps in there. So in the good spots, in a lot of it, we can still get 1050, 1100, sort of
Okay.
in that range is what we're running at canopy level. Um, it's down under 1,000 some other places, and I'd like to get that like 1250 kind of everywhere on the canopy, even with hitting them underneath. I don't want to be hitting them with 1500 underneath, but I
What are you
think
doing
that
with
they can
CO2? You gotta be
probably
adding
tolerate
CO2.
800, 900 under there,
Yeah.
especially after seeing them with 1500. I saw some light avoidance behavior from some leaves and some of the way that the low growth that was really close to the light was behaving. But the plants were healthy and happy. And in most of the four strains, the group with under canopy lighting is visibly sort of bigger plants already than the group without under canopy lighting. And that's just 7 days into the under canopy lighting.
This is what's
So,
helping indoor catch up to outdoor a little bit. It's like we're starting to get these light levels to get the kind of growth that you can kind of see outdoor.
oh, for sure. In terms of PPFD, I mean, we can exceed it. Certainly in terms of DLI, we can blow it away. Um,
You guys mentioned glasses earlier about having underlighting, but I have some buddies in the space who recently asked me because they work under multiple different types. It could be metal halide, it could be CMH, it could be LEDs, it could be HPS. They're working in multiple different grows at the commercial setting, and some rooms are HPS, some are LED, going from like veg to flower, etc. So they had the question if I had any recommendations for grow glasses, and I didn't. I have always just used these very simple, they're polarized sunglasses. And as you can see, they kind of like wrap
yeah.
around. They're a very tight fit to my face. I push them
Yep.
down. They fit my particular head well. But I would find
Yep.
somebody else. I know that like Method 7, I think, makes some that has like a little almost goggle like underneath that almost cups your eye a little to give a full seal, which might be overkill, but might be worth it. Depends on what you think. I think polarized sunglasses that are good enough for the sun. I was a lifeguard. I used to look at a pool in the middle of, summer at noon. So if the sunglasses were good enough for that, then I think that they're good enough for a lot of stuff. But some of these lights are the distances that we are from them, the spectrums that they are, and things like that. I'm curious if you guys have any recommendations on lights. And then after that, we've got a question from uh,
One
Adam the
thing I
grower.
would add, Jack, is if you're using any kind of UV to have UV protection in your lenses, that's important. If you're working under UV lights, artificial lights, you're getting more UV in a lot of cases than you would just being outdoors. But other than that, dark, well-fitting, polarized lenses that have UV protection if that's important. And I think that that's it. Like I really personally, and I do a lot of grow light testing where I'm staring at these damn things and in and out of different grow facilities. Like I use a lot of times just like the ones I get at the trade shows from the grow light manufacturers, like Spartan Grow, people like that. They hand them out as their merchandise because they're just nice, dark, polarized lenses. Something that fits well. I like ones. I don't like to have to take my regular glasses off, so I'm looking for something that fits over the top and still kind of protects that. So I look like a freak in the pictures I take when I'm down in the grow rooms because I'm wearing two pairs of glasses.
No, those are sciencey, bro. You get the come almost
The
goggle look, like the
sciency.
yeah. It makes you like 5 to 10 IQ points higher, like somebody who actually wears glasses generally, or somebody with a British accent. That's like not one of the really out there ones that you can hardly understand, but like a posh British accent. That's like the king or queen's English, however you want to
There
call
you
it.
go. So you can definitely spend a lot of money on sunglasses. You lose them, you can break them, stuff like that. It depends on where you are, but yeah, get glasses, protect your eyes, wear them when you go in there. Don't sort of just squint. You can do damage to your eyes pretty quickly, but I don't think you have to spend hundreds of dollars to get a decent pair of glasses that do that.
I love that recommendation around the safety squints. I know people that are even like chopping wood or steel, and they'll just be like, "Safety squints, bro, like safety third," like joking around. But there's a reason that we have these laws, and OSHA and all that good stuff has protected a lot of people, since a lot of people have injured themselves on job sites not wearing protective equipment. So I'm curious. I know Spartan Grown, it sounds like, is handing them out in some circumstances at some of the trade shows, and I'm curious. I know that in the past you've maybe recommended Method Sevens, if I'm recommending or remembering correctly, but maybe your thoughts and ideas have shifted, and I'm curious what you currently use yourself and what maybe you would suggest other growers out there would use.
Yeah, you do remember correct. My favorite that I've used for a really long time were I think I'm remembering correct. It's like the Agent 939s or something like that, but they've had them forever, and they're just a full spectrum so that, if you're under LED, it's going to look fine. If you're under HPS, it's going to look like you're under HPS. It doesn't color correct for the different spectrums. It's just straight, you know. But they wrap around your face, or at least my face, all the way around. So I'm a real stickler for like the peripheral vision, because if you catch it just right and you have no protection, it hits you in the side of the eye, it's fucking blinding. So, and I bought that one pair, and they are expensive. I think they're definitely over $100. They're like 120 bucks, 129 or something like that. Back when I got them, who knows what they are now? And that was easily 4 to 5 years ago. And I could, I should go down and bring them up, and they look like hell because they've been dropped and everything else, but they've held. And I can still pretty much see through them. So I'm still using them until I don't anymore, because they were 130 bucks. But I feel like it was worth it in the end, because I think if I'd have paid for a less expensive pair and dropped it, it might have just shattered right there. Or
I've got some cheapies that will attest to that. These little lenses pop out, and I occasionally pop them back in. These are like, I don't know, nitrogen. I found these. They're Oakley knockoff. It's like the same factory that makes Oakley from like 9 to 5, from 5 to 9. Instead of a O, they put an N on the side. Like I found the exact same pair at a Oakley store and held them side by side. The same frame, same everything. It's crazy, but way less expensive. I used to be one of those people that would spend hundreds on just general sunglasses, and then I'd go into the ocean with them on and get smacked by a wave and lose them and be very frustrated at myself. And I even wore the little strap for a while, like to try and keep them on, and would often forget to even put that on and lose them. But the one thing I'll also say, and cheap home grow front, like these are like between like 7 and like 15 bucks, so you can just buy like a shit ton of these. So if you do lose them, break them, whatever, you just don't give a shit. I like the rubberized coated ones. I think they like stay on your face a little bit better and they're a little more comfortable. But one thing I will say is fuck, other than for like style and fashion, fuck aviator style, like the Top Gun. They're like almost like a D shape that goes over your eye, and then they've got like the metal wire frames that hook over your ear. Those, what Spartan was describing about peripheral sun or light getting in. I was on the beach one day wearing those, thinking like, oh, they're great. They're polarized lens and they were well made, blah blah blah. And then like I leaned forward, and like the angle that sun just like came in, and like it's like piercing, like in the corner of your eye. It literally hurt. Like it made me wince and squint and not be comfortable, and be happier with some little cheapies that you could get at a gas station or any big box store or whatever it is. But yeah, I think polarized is a big difference. You can even see like when you're driving sometimes people's cars, the back window, like when you like turn your head left or right, you'll see like the safety glass or whatever. You'll see like weird effects. Sometimes it'll look like a rainbow on the glass, or sometimes if you look at the clouds and like turn your head left and right, you can make the clouds kind of look darker, because the way that polarized lenses work is like there's a bunch of lines going this way and a bunch of lines going that way, and so they're physically blocking a certain amount of the light from getting through. Is a big part of the way that they're operating essentially. So it's just interesting little phenomena, if you haven't worn them before, that you might notice some little oddities like that, whether in or outside the grow room. So the last one I'll say is a cheap alternative, is that always does block all the way around, is ski goggles. I've seen people, I think Chef Anna with the pot used to wear the ski goggle. I got myself a cheap pair of polarized ski goggles. I think it was like 20 or 25 bucks. They're comfortable. You can like adjust the little head strap. They cover you all the way around. My wife uses them now when she's like chopping onions so that her eyes don't tear up. But they're multi-purpose, I guess, in that case. But they can be used as a great option for grow room glasses. So somebody asked that prior to the show. We've got one from, I don't think that I'm forgetting about you, Adam the Grower. We're going to talk about the trichome production in a second, but I want to ask Tao and Noah if they have any recommendations, starting with Tao on the grow glasses.
I had some Method Sevens, but yeah, I have no in particular. Just something so yeah, you don't get them dots in your eyes, man. it is amazing how bright that LED lights can be, and they're like uh concentrated. Yeah, you know what I mean. Definitely should wear some sort of glasses.
I was shocked at how trivially Migros, Shane or Sean, whatever, the guy who ran Migro, I asked like, hey,
Right.
why don't you ever wear glasses in any of your videos? Like you're underneath these very powerful grow lights, like testing them at high levels. And he's just like, it's not a big deal. I'll be fine. It's like, okay, I guess that's take your body, your choice type thing. But man, I'd highly recommend against that personally. So there's lots of data and evidence. And I mean, these things are essentially like not quite a laser, but they're getting to the point of like the efficiency of like some of the freaking lasers we're seeing. And people have tried growing with lasers. Funny enough, there's been some interesting test studies and things like that done for like space station grows or whatever. But ultra efficiencies come to a head at a certain point. And I think distribution is more important than ultra high efficiency at a single point.
I want to make one point here too. Exposure time matters with this. So even when you sort of protect your eyes, the amount of time that you're in the grow space or in the grow room should be moderated. You shouldn't go in there under 1200 ppfd and just work for 8 hours. Um, that's you need to kind of break that up into smaller pieces and return your eyes to sort of more favorable conditions. In addition to having just visual symptoms, a lot of people experience headaches. I get headaches from certain kinds of, usually from UV lights, but that like feel this really frontal headache that can linger for days after an overexposure. So the issue that you're dealing with from a health perspective is exposure, just like a sunburn. It's not just the amount that you take at any one time, like the density of the light, or the quantum energy that's burning you, but the duration of time that you're exposed to it. Generally, I think home growers should turn off their grow lights when they're working in their tents. I'd always put a shop light up in the top of my, like one of these clip shop lights, that I'd flick on, turn off my grow light, flick that on, and go in there and work. Now, you got to be careful you don't leave the damn flip light on and you turn your other light back on. And we always have these like gardening while high accidents. So, like, all of those caveats aside, like that shit does happen when you do that. But definitely think about ways to moderate your exposure. With the under canopy lights that we're working on, Spartan, I should have said this too in terms of that. I advocate for turning them off when you're doing training on those tables. Don't just because you're standing there staring at the damn lights. You never do that with the
Yeah.
overhead lights.
Even with, yeah, I was just say, even with the best grow light glasses I have, I still, when we go into like at the Trichome Forge and we're
Yeah,
like, no, shut those off. I'm
yeah.
gonna stare at
And
that.
the most dangerous thing for that for me was doing the longer tests when I was taking like 200 samples of a PPFD test
Oh God.
and standing there for like an hour plus glaring down into this test area space. I tease about only using like the giveaway glasses, but in that case, I'd wear a sleep mask that had two little eye holes cut out of it and then put glasses on over that. So like that would completely block every
Damn.
peripheral thing.
Nice.
Yeah. You do need to, in both cases, you can't do, I saw somebody said like the after cataract surgery glasses. You do need to be able to see still.
A welding mask.
Yeah, right. Like you need to still be able to like make stuff out. You can't go in to do pruning with like a blindfold on. So it's better to just like turn off the lights or severely dim the lights, something like that. Just remember to turn them back on.
Even
We've
if you knock
definitely
it
all
down 50%, you're gonna do yourself a big favor.
Yeah.
we've all forgot to turn a timer back on
That's
or turn a light back on or something like that. Like gardening while high, like you said, that's very common. No, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this matter or the grow light or grow glasses. commentary.
Of course. So anytime I turn off one of my grow lights to go in there and do something, I always turn a timer on my phone. So if I plan on going in the room for half an hour, I turn it because, like you said, everyone's forgotten.
Yeah.
So I'm very anal about that. So I turn a timer on my phone for an hour, and 95% of the time, literally, I'll just be like, "Oh, that's right, the alarm is off." But you'd be surprised how many times I'm in my house. Probably like 1 out of 10 times. I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to turn the lights, but plug the lights back in, go back out there, turn it off. And then I have just like I'm fortunate that I have a permanent grow room. I have an actual just regular home light bulb that I have set up in the room to do the exact same thing. That way, if I'm doing any IPM or working in my bedroom, in my flower room, I have a green light. Same thing. I have a permanent setup. And then when it comes to glasses, I wear prescription glasses, so I keep a prescription pair of sunglasses right by my grow room that I used to go in there. It's funny how when I was younger, I was the same way. Like I didn't care. And then after about maybe 6 months, a year of working in that grow room, I started getting headaches, and I'm like, well, you know what? I think I'm gonna pay a little bit extra money at Costco, get a prescription sunglasses, one of like my regular glasses, have a pair just ready for that to go in there. And yeah, I definitely think the timer, like I said, you remember, you just turn the timer off later, but it saved me more than once. So
It's great advice. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to see you in your grow room maybe a little bit later today, but
why
maybe
not?
not. And I'll pass it back to you for our next question we've got coming up, which is from Adam the grower, who very much earlier asked, and hopefully they're here patiently waiting for the response. What are ways to increase trichome production? So Noah the grower, I'm curious your thoughts on this matter, if any.
Trichome production. So we're talking about ways to produce more trichomes in flower, obviously. Well,
Essentially, you make
yeah.
resinous plants. How do you do it? What's the secret
Hmm.
to get a little
Well,
extra?
obviously there's NPK. You would want to kind of raise the level, especially of the not the nitrogen, the P and the K. Those are the definitely ways to help it in flower. I like to use a microbe supplement to kind of break down any organic matter. I can firmly believe that that will work. And then, like I've told you before, my bro science method is to use anywhere from 3 to 5 milliliters of high quality molasses. I like to do it probably about 5 times in flower after week 2, and I obviously would stop in week 7. So once a week, maybe try and like alternate like fertilizer and then like fertilizer flush, and then just water, whatever, not flush like pouring water out of it, but just water only. And then one of those water onlys, I'll do it. Sometimes if I get lazy or if I want to experiment, I'll throw it in there with the fertilizer too. But I don't like to hit them that hard with a lot of heavier stuff. So I usually just do it. And like I kind of experiment levels. It could be the bigger the plant, the bigger you might give it a little bit of molasses and make sure you're using a high quality molasses. But this is just all my personal opinion. I use it to help feed the microbes, and I've had good personal luck with it.
That's what the show's all about, man. Growing with my fellow growers. I love that we were all able to share our opinion. I'm going to pass it around to everybody, probably just go reverse order of the last one. And I think I started with Doc last time, so I'll pass it next to Tao and see if he has any tips, tricks, or secrets on how to maximize trichome production or increase trichome production.
I don't know. There's a lot of old wives' tales that probably aren't true that I won't even bother mentioning. But I will say one thing: if you have a healthy plant, you'll have more plant matter, and if you have the right nutrients and aren't giving it too much, nitrogen, vegetative nutrients, you'll have more flower material, which would hopefully contain more resin. So having a good, healthy plant and would be a good idea to start with. And yeah, everything else would be anecdotal, so I won't like say anything else. But people say UV light. They say the trichomes are for protected from sunburn or other things. So yeah, I mean, but none of it has really been sussed out to my where I would give any kind of advice for any of that. People say put a nail through the stem at the end, and it's been proven that that only hurts the plant. So yeah, I really
Wondering if
don't know.
anybody bring that up.
Yeah, I really don't know.
You're not
So
ice flushing. You're not hitting it with snow
I've
at the
Yeah,
never
end.
yeah.
ice flushed. I think I put ice cubes on it once when it was like 100 degrees and the AC broke, but that wasn't to try and suss out more night trichomes.
To keep it
72
cool.
hours of darkness before harvest.
Yeah, that's another one that we just talked about that. They were poo-pooing on that somewhere recently.
We did
Uh,
talk about it maybe a month or two back, I think, for
yeah.
some article.
So yeah, I really don't know. I think I encourage people to experiment though. Why not? I mean, if it's not like if it's not what's feeding your family, you may as well experiment, try some stuff and see what you think. Yeah, that's what I would say. All right, I'll shut up there.
Oh, that's good. Good takes on that. And I'm curious if Spartan Grown has any takes on this matter. The question again from Adam the Grower was how to increase trichome production. A fairly simple question that could have a lot of broad answers. And it's always interesting how each one of us, I think, approaches it maybe a little bit differently. So I'm curious what Spartan has to say on this one before we pass it to Doc.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'd answer it a couple ways. I would say broadly speaking, and actually I think Tao brought it up before I did, is you need a healthy plant. What we're talking about with trichomes is, hopefully inside of those is your secondary metabolites or, maybe even further. And before the plant invests its energy, we'll say, in making those secondaries, it's got to get through the firsts first. So that's, all of the steps, the nutrition, the environment, a good veg, and making sure you're putting in a plant that looks healthy when you go into flower, not putting in a struggling plant into flower. And that's going to get you a long ways to having a nice frosty plant at the end, I think. And then just like quick little tip things is like it's more related than because like what Tao said and everyone actually before, so there's nothing really been proven. But for terpenes, which is part of it, I know that sulfur is huge on that. So I like to sneak sulfur into plants if I feel like there's some kind of a terpene I'm missing, or if I want trying to make it a little bit louder. And I can do that pretty easy with maybe some Epsom salts as a foliar, or because that's calcium and sulfur. Or I mean,
You
there's
apply
some
that during flower, Spartan, or late
early
veg, or
flower. I,
when
I
would you
would do
give
it
that?
before. I'd do it before bud set, but it would be. I don't usually do it in late veg, but maybe week one, week two of flower, I would do an Epsom salt foliar, and then maybe a top dress of it at about week four, if I really thought it was something I wanted to pump up the sulfur, to bring up the sulfur. You can't go heavy with Epsom salt though because of the magnesium that it's bound to, and that magnesium, it's going to fuck with your calcium, possibly, or potassium, which you don't want in flour. Uh, what was the other thing? There was, oh, light. Manipulating light. I'm really finding the whole strategy of starting out veg. This is for me and my, this is not a commercial situation because they don't have to worry about height. But for me, in my flower room where I'm worried about height is, I like to, take the first 3 weeks of flower and run. I still have reds in there, but I like to have more, keep my blues in there. It's pretty much my veg spectrum through through the bolt. I want to use my veg spectrum through the bolt, basically, and then go to my red heavy flower spectrum to encourage the buds to bulk and flower and all that happy stuff going on. And then maybe last week go back to that the blue spectrum to increase some of that resin production at the very end in the last week. And with that little strategy, I've been I again, we're talking anecdotal, right? But it's like, ooh, I think I see a notice. I think that looks better. That definitely looks frostier to me. Um, so those are some things you can play with to try to maybe eke out. We're talking 1 to 5% differences, probably, maybe 10%.
Yeah, I just want to add, yeah, I forgot to say, genetics. Basically, what your plan is going to dictate how many trichomes you could possibly have, and then it's up to you to provide the plant everything it needs to make as many trichomes as possible. Like even with adding the sulfur, I don't think it's going to add trichomes. It's going to add what's in the trichomes and make them better, probably. With the terpenes and whatnot, they'll change what's in the trichomes I would imagine more than how many trichomes. So yeah, I would definitely add that it's basically up to the genetics. Because yeah, some genetics you'll have trichomes on the fan leaves and on the stems, and like that's one that if you get something like that, you should keep that cutting. But yeah, and then some there won't be any. There'll only be trichomes on the buds, on the actual bud clusters, and very little on the leaf.
What if it
But
had trichomes on the buds and the stems, but it sucked?
that I haven't experienced that, but
I have seen a couple that it
yeah,
was
I have
CBD
had
stuff, hemp.
resinous plants, yeah, that had no high, and they just looked like the best weed that you could find, and it did nothing. That was before like it was even legal, and I was just like, "There's something that like I was like, what the hell's going on?" I couldn't comprehend it,
It might
but
have been
yeah,
high CBD.
right. I'm sure it was. Yeah, it definitely was. But there was plenty of resin, plenty of trichomes, but it didn't do anything. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but changing the trichome production, like I think there's something that could be said that makes the trichomes bigger, maybe like you're saying, looks frostier, right? I think that could be a possibility. It makes the trichomes healthier, bigger, and I think that's definitely a possibility. And even Skunkman Sam said, and it made sense at the time, if you have a big, huge plant with bigger than like average um seed pods, let's say, like bigger everything, the resin glands are going to be bigger too.
Yeah, he said
So
he dry sifted like a giant skunk number one, a regular size skunk number one, and a mini skunk number one, and the resin was the biggest on the biggest
on the
plant.
biggest plant, there you
The
go. It
medium
just kind
plant
of
was
makes
average
sense,
resin, and the
right?
small one had
Yeah.
small resin, and like more collections, and even like the smaller bags for the small ones, etc.
And I
So
bet you that something strain specific too, because
That's such an interesting thing, but then you think about it, and it's like, what does that tell us? It doesn't tell us anything about quality. Okay, it had a bigger head. Does that mean it had a higher yield, or does it mean it just had a thicker, waxy coating on the outside?
right.
right.
I want all of the data.
There's so many,
What was
yeah,
the smoke
there's
test
so
like,
many
Sam?
intricacies,
Which one was
man.
the best high?
It could be more wax and lipids than what was inside. Like yeah, like you just
Yeah,
hinted at.
RIP, he's no longer with us, but
I tell
don't
you
mean to
what,
make light.
man, the best way to judge material is to smoke it. Is to
absolutely.
smoke it. That's it, man. Don't even
Yeah.
take
I
it to
agree with
the
that.
don't even take it to the lab. Take it to the head, and it'll tell you what's going on,
I'll take
man.
it to the lab. This is the
Yeah, I
lab.
am the lab.
Personal lab tests.
That's fun. Yeah, I would get. I mean, I agree that strain is probably the most important. Grow the right strain, and then keep everything proper. Right? We could say like proper lighting, proper nutrition, proper watering, proper climate, um, proper nutrients. I think are certainly part of that, but I don't really think that you can goose your trichome numbers by sort of spiking your P and your K. Um, I think you could do problems by not having adequate P and K, but I think that there's a reasonable range to be had. I see a lot of people pushing different things, trying to chase kind of trichomes or trying to chase kind of potency
Right.
numbers or things like that, that I think are somewhat misguided. Um, the one thing I haven't heard anybody say, and I think that this is important, is proper pruning. Um, you want the cannabis plant to sort of invest its energy properly. If it has too many budding sites, the energy will be too distributed across the plant. And even though it will prioritize the budding sites higher on the plant, if its energy is drawn in too many different directions, those buds at the top of the plant won't be as good as they otherwise could have been. I think a lot of new growers, and this is probably the biggest mistake you see made by new home growers, is they don't prune enough lowers off of their plants vis-a-vis sort of how much light those plants are getting. Um, so there's a relationship between kind of how much light, how much surface area usually, and that you have good lighting in like your tent, how much surface area that plant takes up and how much bud you can expect to grow off of it. And if you leave all the lowers and a lot of lower budding sites, that they're going to be larf. They're not going to develop properly, but they're also going to steal energy away from the uppers that could have been better. So that's a big thing that I think as some home growers, probably not the one that's asking this, but some home growers may be able to improve the quality of their buds and improve sort of the trichome density by pruning the budding sites that are lower on the plants and kind of lollipopping the plants up.
Hey,
I think that's a great tip.
well, I think got it in my head. So, talking about trichome production now, you guys have seen the white tips, right? They say light burn, the white tips. Now it is some albino-ish, but some of it is just an intense trichome cluster. Is that correct, or am I
Well,
misguiding
some plants
myself?
are so white or so frosty they look white. So like that's
Well,
white
we
widow
were talking
initially was
about
I
called
don't
that
know.
because it
Right,
had so
right.
much trichome it looked
But
white.
a lot
But
of
like what you're
those
talking about with light burn
tip
or like
burns,
bleaching,
they are kind of, some of them have a lot of resin, it seems like, concentrated on that
it
burn
doesn't
part.
prevent the plant from making resin. I know people who've collected exclusively that and said it was like a terpless smoke,
It was
but
bogus. Okay, right. The resin glands were bogus. I could believe that. But that could be an
The light
indication that
bleach
maybe the
stuff,
light
yeah.
could have an effect
yeah,
on
light
something.
bleach
I
stuff
got
is just not good quality. It's just not good.
right.
I mean, yeah, yeah.
Like Spartan
Okay.
said, it has to make its primary metabolites, secondary metabolites, etc. Like when it's
That's
not able to
lacking
produce
something, yeah.
anthocyanin, it's not turning purple, it's white. It's got bleached out. It's not producing chlorophyll. It's not even green. So it's
Right.
white because it's not effectively functioning properly.
It's not
It's
Well,
a
think
doing
about
sign
it
of
too.
but
Even if it was producing all of the terpenes, it's the one that's the closest to the light in the hottest spot, and it's going to flash off the
fastest to cook
majority of
off.
all of the,
Yeah, it gets the
stuff that's
most.
going
so the reason I brought up
to
is that
function the
perhaps
best.
that it's light that might have an effect on trichome production, whether it be good or
True.
bad, but it might
I
be
think it
more
does
than
for
anything
sure.
Imagine
else.
it for sure
You know,
does.
Well,
more
and
than anything
preservation, like
else.
some people dim down the last 2 weeks,
Right. I'm
right? They go from
telling
like
you,
100% to
I told the
90 or
story.
Yeah, but
85%.
that's okay. Well,
Hold,
I think that's more a little bit. Maybe Dr. MJ can maybe and I can agree on this one for sure. But I think that's more from the back in the day when people are overlighting their room with HPS and getting all the extra
anecdotally.
ambient heat, and then they were like, okay, if I turn the light down,
Yeah.
not knowing that
It
really they're
happened to
turning
me.
the heat down. That's what's helping them. It's not so
So
much light; it's that damn heat that you're lowering that's doing all of the work for you and keeping those terpenes.
Yeah,
let me tell you an
That can still
incidental
benefit an
story.
LED room if it's
So
running a little too warm.
I had one of those sun circles. You put a light on a bar and it goes around in a circle, so it would do better coverage. You know, circling.
A light mover.
Well, yeah, light mover. It was they called it a sun circle. You put two lights on it and it just went in circle. And one of them died at like week 6. I never replaced it, and that shit was terpier. I don't know if it was more resin, but it just seemed like it was better than other
yeah.
harvests using it. So
You can
anecdotally,
definitely
yeah,
overlight
probably.
terps.
Yep.
And I've seen that a lot with people with light movers in particular because they hit stupid numbers with these double-ended HPS bulbs, but they think that if it's only 3,500 for like 10 seconds as the light passes over the top of it, that it's not going to burn their plants.
Yeah, it burns a
But like it
motherfucker.
does. And I think it definitely hurts quality, even though the plants can survive it because it's not constant. It can hurt quality. That's what I was worried about the under canopy lighting. It's like just too strong. And I don't want to push these. I never want to push light in particular to the point where you see the signs of stress or damage because the plants can do a lot to compensate for abuse. Like if the optimal point is like 800 ppfd, you may not see damage until they're like at 1600 ppfd or 1700 ppfd, but in between 800 and 1600, that light wasn't helping. The plant was like using different strategies to survive it, like it can do these photo protection responses to basically protect itself from excessive light. And then if you really exceed that, then you start to see physical signs of damage like bleaching and stuff. But if you're seeing that, you've gone so far past the point that would have been optimal. It's not like go until you see damage and then back off a little bit. It's like go until you see damage. You've gone 3 times further than you should have gone in the first place.
I love him, but that's one of Rasta Jeff's tips with dialing in a new strain in the commercial setting, he would push it and push it until he would see those, what he called like painted the fingernails. So like the leaf, if you can see my logo behind me, when those start to
Yeah.
turn a little bit yellow, when you're in the
Yeah.
commercial setting, kind of pushing heavy nutrient load, eventually you're going to get to the point where you're overfeeding. And he said once they got to that point, he would always dial it back and then keep it at that point and lower. And it works out. But ideally, like you're saying, if by the time that happens, you are actually way over where it could have been, and it did a lot of stuff. It spent a lot of energy
Yeah.
trying to find that equilibrium, find the happy point, which is difficult when it's being given too much of a nutrient load. And as we've seen with Doc and others plants, you can get away with as a cheap home grower, you can get away with way less. So if you can make healthy plants with lower EC, I'm never a fan of the guys that are like, let's push 3.5 or 4.5 or 5 EC and do this type of watering and this type of dryback, blah, blah, blah. I'd rather go with 1.5 EC because then it saves the grower money and it just works. You're not having to deal with so many like driving Ferrari at 1,000 miles an hour or 1,000 RPM or something like that, 100 miles an hour. If any little thing goes wrong, then the plant blows up in your face and has all sorts of leaf curl, tips, burning, and all sorts of other stress issues that will show up if you don't have everything perfectly dialed. And most of us, admittedly,
Right.
don't as much as we try. There's going to be little holes in our game that show up. And so that stuff is going to end up popping out. I think one of the things that I didn't hear mentioned, and it's only backed by one study in Canada, in the University of Guelph. It was a fairly extensive paper, and I thought it was well done, but it's not definitive. But even before that, I've kind of quoted like lavender from the drought
Oh,
areas
interesting.
being higher terpene. Cannabis, I think, can have, and I only recommend one time the entire grow cycle, just once, if you're going to do it. And it's like 1 to 2 weeks before you harvest or right before you harvest. I liked to do that for a long time. And side by side, and Adam, the grower, followed up. He said, thanks for all the tips. I've grown cuts of the same strain and had noticeable differences in the amount of trichomes on different runs. And that could be like a whole nother topic we'll get into. But I've noticed even on the same run, like having two of the same cut side by side, this is what really convinced me of the drought stress is when I drought stressed the one till it drooped, like late flower. I think in my case it was like week 9, not week 8, like the Guelph study. But when it did like that 45-degree leaf droop from not getting enough water, and then I rewatered it and it perked back up, the resin went from being like sandy to like super fucking glue. It was so sticky and just terpy. The smell coming off it was outrageous. So I let the other one next to it. I think it was initially maybe an accident. I didn't even plan for it to happen. I let the cut next to it that was feeling kind of gritty and sandy on the resin still drought stress. I let it do the leaf droop to like that 45-degree hang and watered it, came back, and the same exact thing happened. And they were at the same point in flower. It was like the exact same point in the cycle. So the one had it happen a few days earlier than the other one. And I feel fairly convinced that it was in part due to that late flower drought stress. But if you
Did
did
you
it more
harvest
than
them?
once, you fuck
Did
the
you harvest
yield
them at equal
and quality.
times? Did you harvest them at equal times too?
Yeah.
Okay, after that. Okay.
Are you fertilizing, Jack?
I was at that point and still, well, I've done it in cocoa. That's where I initially noticed it, but I
With
also have done
fertigation?
it. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I was fertigating
Did you
myself
do
like
anything?
two.
But do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was doing like 2 waterings a day, maybe one at minimum, but I was, uh, not quite. That's high frequency fertigation, I think, for in some
Yeah,
situations.
technically. Uh-huh.
And
Did you do anything before the dry back to prepare the plants in terms of EC or anything like that?
I think part of it was that they saw the EC spike, they recorded it. They were using like a 1.5 EC the whole entire time, and they compared it to the well-watered condition. That's what I liked that they did. They actually had a controlled condition. The controlled condition did well. It was like a 9 out of 10. This was just like a 10 out of 10. It had a slightly larger yield, and it was higher, like 12% higher in THC, 13% higher in CBD.
I thought
But
it
that
was
doesn't mean it
earlier
was like
too.
that amount more. It was like 25 versus 28% or something.
Do you remember
Um,
like when you went to water it, was it like fucking bone dry? Like when you picked it up, it was light as shit, or was it still kind of had some weight to it? Because I know the plants sometimes will droop and then you go pick up the fucking pot, and it's like you don't even feel like you need water yet.
I think that might be
Yeah, how
because
long was the dry back?
in their case, it was 10 days, I think.
What?
Oh
In
shit.
my
Okay, that
case,
was
it was less
long.
than that. I was in smaller pots. I think they were in like 10-liter pots or something, and I was in like 2 gallon maybe.
Okay.
And
So this must be a different study. I thought this was the study we looked at a few years ago that I remember them doing the drought stressing in week 6.
thought it was 7, but I could be misremembering. It's the University of Guelph. There's like 4
Well,
different
if they did
studies
it for
baked into
10
it.
days, that's week 6 and 7. You know, I mean, that's
Right,
like,
right. Yeah,
That's a
a week and a half.
long.
I was shocked because it was they literally just like turned off the automated watering system and let it
Right.
go until so the plants were so healthy and happy in those pots they ostensibly were able to go 10 days before they let the leaves droop to negative
But that
45.
was the lavender, or was that pot?
That was cannabis. That was in Canada,
Oh,
University of Guelph
still.
in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did like three or
Um,
four studies in that thing. They did like one where they tested if you cut the tips of the clones versus not doing it, and they
Mhm.
like
Yep.
rated the
Yep.
clones roots as like one was like present, two was good, and like zero was not present. And they found, I think that it was in their case, better to leave them. But they
Mhm.
also noted that cutting them is more for like the commercial space, like being able to fit way more into a clone dome and not having the humidity issues and things like that. So like you can cut them or you cannot cut them. Both ways can work at like a 2 level of roots or like a good level of roots. But it was just interesting to see that they documented it pretty well. I thought the study in general is worth looking at. And we've looked at it on the show in the past, and I've got like PDF screenshots of the different, like, I think it's like page 72 or something like that. Spartan
Yo,
comments.
I got a question for everyone. It's a little different take on the other one. So, and I've seen this, I think, but have you seen situations where you get less trichomes for one reason or another? From like the kid said, he had the same clones, but he had less trichomes from
It's too
different
hot,
grows.
dude. Too fucking
Yeah.
hot. That's killed a lot of like good summer
Yeah.
grows versus like my perfect winter grow. If it's
Yeah.
way too hot, out of range versus like perfectly dialed in, that'll do it. Spartan Grown is sharing his screen here. I think he might have the exact information from the study.
Yeah, it's fun.
You might need a, at least for my terrible eyes, control plus plus on that so we can get like more of a full screen, or you could just read it
You
out so we
could
can hear it.
zoom it up. But yeah,
I'm,
that was my take. It was heat
yeah, but
stress.
it was saying week 7. Yeah, you're withholding irrigation during week 7 of the 8-week flowering. So it's only an 8-week cultivar. So the week before harvest, pretty much, was the drought stress.
and what
And
size were the pots?
it's
And how big were the plants? How long were they vegged? I just have so many questions. I'm sorry.
it doesn't say any of that. And this was just I just asked Gemini, so I didn't even pull up the study. I can see
Yeah, send them the
pull the study.
study. That's
We
it.
grow big pots in 1 gallon pots, or big plants in 1 gallon pots. Like a week without watering, they would die.
They would definitely die.
Yeah, for sure.
1 gallon container. You could probably just miss one water and get a 45 droop, right?
Probably.
One
Yeah.
week without water, even in a 5, man. I mean, even if you had a living soil, that's I mean, you could do
Yeah,
it,
two
maybe. I
days
mean,
it would be
shoot, I don't
dry.
know. That doesn't
Oh,
seem like the positives are that great. I mean, you might want to try 2 if you're doing every other day or something, like maybe do a
right.
day, but I wouldn't go that far.
I
Just
just
want to
went
say
till
this for
droop.
those
It
of you
wasn't
that
like
are
that week for me.
out there fertigating, like water is probably sixth or seventh on the list of things that are important when you fertigate. And in terms of the reasons that you fertigate, but like I'm more worried about things like the change in the EC, the change in the pH, the change in the dissolved oxygen content, than I am really about the change in water availability. I think water availability would become a problem even in the 1 gallon containers.
And EC.
It wouldn't be that it's the water's not there. It's like that the EC would be rising too high in the water that was there. So
Yeah.
if you're in a big 5 or 7 gallon pot or something, and which I imagine is what the Guelph study were in, I don't know that though, but that's what it seems like for if they went that long before getting that
Or
droop.
10-gallon pot.
Right. That might be different, but if you try to mimic that in a smaller pot, or if you're running a higher EC to begin with, because the other big thing that happens when you stop watering is the EC in the pot just goes up. If you've been fertigating, just goes up and up and up until it becomes impossible for the plant to absorb it. Your pH will run out of range. That causes sometimes nutrient lockout to occur. Um, like weird things start to happen before you're necessarily worried about just the lack of water per se.
And what
And
do
when
they
we do
do
high
after
frequency,
that? Do they just
what's
like
that?
come in, and what do you do after the dry back? Do you just come in with like an extra heavy water to
You'd
flush like
almost
Do
have
100%
you
to
do you
flush.
flush?
volume
Yeah.
You'd
through?
have
It
to
just
flush. I don't know if they did, but I would certainly have recommended that.
Doc,
So
do
you're
you
not, so
flush
I think that
ever?
the days of not watering, you kind of lose in the fucking, so, you know, what you have to flush through that motherfucker afterwards, probably, you know?
Right. Well, you're not doing it to conserve water. You're doing it to like bring out the terpenes.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to find positives.
And I'm not
Okay.
trying to shit on the study. Like I believe they did the study and that's what they found. I'm just worried about people trying to like copy the results and having a negative experience because their setup is a little bit different than the one described in the
11
study.
liter pots is what it was, 279 millimeters
5
by
gallons.
241 millimeters.
That's like
So
3.5 gallon.
Yeah,
Okay,
3.5.
hold on a second. Boys and girls listen to this show. Let me say something right now. If just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something, I highly recommend not
Ah,
doing this. I'm saying it. I don't care. There you go.
I'll say that the timeline is experimental towards your own environment. I've done this myself several times, and what I do is not based on the study's timeline because I don't grow in their size pots. I'm not in their environment. I'm not growing the plants that they are. I'm growing my plants, and I'm trying to grow the headiest, dankest shit possible. And in my experience, the improvement was there, so I've continued to do it. All I do is wait till those leaves droop one time late in flower, and in this case, like they did, it was like a week and a half before they harvested. And so they watered them like one good time, I think, basically flushing them in week 8.5, going into 9 or whatever, 7.5, 8, which a lot of commercial environments are kind of already doing. Like they're either like flushing their plants or withholding water in a certain amount. They're doing drybacks and things like that. Maybe not necessarily to the level of leaf droop, but they are stressing their plants in different ways, which has variable outcomes. In this one, it's one that I'm a firm believer in more because not that I think we always need to mimic nature. I think horticulture beats agriculture in performance very often because we have control over everything. And when you can control everything, you can do it better than it can be done outdoor. Not to say that it can't be done outdoor amazingly, and certain environments do it spectacularly, right? But not everywhere is Northern California or like the coffee belt for certain things, like that. Um, but getting back to this lavender in nature, when it's drought stressed, primarily in like the Mediterranean regions, I think France is one of them. That's like the most valuable, expensive lavender on the planet because it's got the most amount of linalool, which is a terpene also found in cannabis. And I believe they're both C3 or C4 plants, whichever one uses CO2. I can't remember. Maybe Duck can
Hey,
fix me up
Doc,
on
I
that
got a
one.
question. Do you ever flush during the cycle to, you know, mitigate
you
maybe
can
any
flush
kind of
sometimes
yeasty build?
individual plants, not the whole room. I mean, not on a not on a grow that I was able to set up the like fertigation
Beginning, yeah.
protocols to begin with.
And
Sometimes
that's
to
the key,
cure a
right?
problem. What's that?
That's the key. You want to be level throughout the whole thing. You don't want to be overdoing it to where you might want to do a flush.
Correct. I think having to do a flush means something went wrong. And I think it's a huge red flag if you're using nutrients from a company that recommends consistent or periodic flushing. I think that you shouldn't have to do that. You don't want to do it. It's stressful to the plants. You want to use nutrients in a rate and
Consistent, small, yeah, consistent too, right?
right
Yeah.
that doesn't lead to buildup that needs to be flushed out. Now,
Because
every once in a while, you get a plant, and usually what has happened is like in a big grow room, you have them on a dripper system, and oftentimes plants will get like two drippers in each pot, and one of the drippers will get clogged up. And so that plant isn't getting enough water. And since it's not getting enough water, the EC levels in that pot start to go up, 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 up. And then you see the plant visibly suffering.
mhm,
Sometimes they wilt, sometimes they change colors, like they'll turn really pale. Um,
mhm.
and then we'll individually flush, just grab like a pitcher of water and bring it to that pot and, individually flush out that plant to get it back up and make sure its drippers are working.
So yeah,
Um,
but yeah, because it's definitely a thing where you get damage if you overdo the nutrients. Even if it's
correct.
wet, even if you keep them wet and overdo the nutrients, you could get the same effect. Or is that, you know what I mean?
Well, it depends on what your media is set up. If your media is set up to be perpetually at saturation levels, then you don't really have to worry about sort of
Okay.
overwatering for saturation.
Right, but over
In
nutrient
cocoa
thing.
perlite in small enough pots, or even in straight cocoa in a small enough pot, with a big enough plant, it can be at 100% saturation all of the time, and the plant's going to be just perfectly fine. So you can flush, like you're not worried about drowning it that way. That is a concern
Right.
in medias that like larger pots that don't have as much air capacity and that the plants aren't big enough to suck the pot dry. You want your plant to be able to drink all the water in the pot, like a couple times a day, I think. But it's certainly within a few days. You don't want it to be
Yeah.
sitting there in
Yeah.
its own water after several days.
2 days, right? 2, 3 days. That's what I think. Right. Even in like, well, I don't know, living soil, I guess, is totally different. But even when I
Dude,
was doing the super soil, I like to see my plants use up that water. Then they're growing and they're using the water. So it's
Yeah.
I'm so happy when
transpiring.
I see that because I just figured that's everything's running, man, because
Right.
that's everything, I'm thinking in my head, and even in my big fucking sip containers,
Hmm.
a lot of times these plants get big and flower and I'll have
They'll
to
suck
water
it
them
up.
every
Yep.
fucking day. They empty out every
Yeah.
day, man. And
Right.
it's like, it's amazing that it goes through and it can go through a gallon plus every day. And it's just like, when
Yeah,
everything's kicking,
you want your plants to be, so that's the really why transplanting I think is important. Even in super soils and organics. I mean, I would grow that way. I would pot up. I know a lot of growers pot directly into final containers for various reasons, but I think
You're,
potting up beats those
yes,
reasons usually.
I agree 100%. Even with any kind of whatever you're doing, you want to go potting up because that's where I've had like, yeah, most or any issues. It's because I put it into a bigger container too
I
soon.
like to
And
encourage people that argue with me because I'm on your guys' side. But I like to encourage people that like to argue with me and say, no, I don't need to pot up more than once or whatever. I'm like, okay, take out your next plant that you grow out. After you harvest it and the root ball all dries out and it's easier to work
mm,
with, pull it out
pull
of the
it out.
pot and look at that fucking root ball. You pull apart and you'll see the middle. There'll be like your roots aren't going in there
Mm-hmm.
at all
Mm-hmm.
because it'll be right where you transplanted, and then it shoots out to the next transplant to the edge, circles the edge, and it hangs out there usually. There's got this dead zone in the middle. But if you can keep forcing them to fill out the pot, fill out the
Yeah,
next pot,
exactly.
fill out the next
Right.
pot, now
Exactly.
stand on that motherfucker and it won't break.
I love going through my roots.
Yeah, do a good root excavation of a transplanted pot of a plant versus a non-transplanted pot, like Spartan's saying, and you'll probably not want to go back to not transplanting your pots. But it's just also such a challenge to water them because, like I said, you don't
Mm-hmm.
want them sitting in old water. So that's why you have to like water it so carefully when they're a tiny little plant in a gigantic pot.
I really, for myself, what I had to do for myself to make it work easier for me, because I struggled with that. Like, what do I water this fucking little? What do I water this gallon? And I got I just got a plastic graduated picture that had, numbers on it, milliliters. So then I know, okay, my smallest plants, I'll give 200 milliliters a day. My, next biggest plants, I give 400. My next biggest plants, I can give 8 to 1,000. And then it's just numbers that I can look at and see the lines on the cup, and it's not guessing. It's not, feeling or even lifting at that point. And that's what helped my watering at the low end. I call it the low end because it's the low end of the volume of media, basically. Um, was having an actual fucking a watering vessel that it could be a beaker, I don't care. If it has the
Measuring.
graduations on the side to tell you how much water you got in it, that's what you need, something to
Well,
give you a touch of the
get
water.
one of these giant oral syringes. They have like 100 milliliter oral syringes. You can like suck up exactly how much you want, like dose each plant like that. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever helps. That's what I like about growing in a media like cocoa perlite. Is just water it. Just water it enough that you see runoff coming out and then you're good. You don't have to get so cute with it. But I think this all started. Tao asked about flushing, and yeah, no, Tao, during the grow, at the end of the grow, what I've gotten fond of is doing a little flush like just 2 days before, and then essentially stop watering. That flush is to knock down the EC so the EC doesn't rise too much in like the last day or two that they're in there. In Coke, that's not really to drought stress them. At a lower EC, they've got enough water, even in that smaller pot, to sort of
Right.
not drought stress them over the last couple of days. And it kind of does help with
The
the
drying.
dry. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
So you can prune the leaves off easier too.
basically I was using advanced nutrients with ProMix, and I was over nutrienting, and I never flushed them. And I went to California once, and
Yeah.
I told them what happened, and they're like, "Yeah, dude, you got to flush. You got to flush it."
They're
Like I
one of
didn't even
my
know
worst
about it,
offenders for that. Yeah.
but it was true because what if they like my plants? So you ever see like Dr. Seuss? Actually, my bud, one of my plants looked like a lollipop, literally a lollipop. The top bud looked like Dum Dum, and it was literally because it was over fertilized. And after I realized
Yes.
it and was educated, then I realized it, and that's exactly what it was. And then
They
that's what made
encourage you
me
to over fertilize and then flush.
right.
And
And I never flushed.
flushing is also just it's such a sign to me. It's an admission that there's a problem with your product if you have to instruct your customers to flush. So take that when you're evaluating your next nutrient purchase. You want something that you can run the whole cycle at a reasonable level and never have to flush. Now,
And
I will say with full disclosure, like I recommend some of the lowest EC numbers in the industry. I talked to a lot of like
it
consultants and
works though.
commercial growers. It absolutely works, and I think that it works better than the schemes
And
that they're
saves a little
running.
bit of money. But let
But
me
I do
say,
run low levels.
so yeah, shit, now I just forgot what I was thinking, but oh yeah, so that's what made me think about like if, and it was definitely shit. Hold on a second.
You're not using advanced nutrients anymore, right?
No,
No,
he's not.
that's what made me think about so yeah, now I remember. So that and
Hey, that's
also
how
like
you
I was
know
rolling
that Noah's
joints,
got your back, bro. So that's
right?
just
I
fist
was
bump, air
rolling
fist bump for that,
joints
Noah.
and yeah, fist bump for sure. Rolling joints, and it was like charcoal. The shit would not burn. It was black. It didn't burn at all. It was black. It didn't burn at all. And so yeah, I even before after they told me like yeah, you got to flush out the nutrients to get nutrient buildup in your shit. So that's what encouraged me to try super soil. And once I did the super soil, I never looked back. Saying all that, I realize now if I did it right, it was probably would have been killer. If I used something like Doc suggests, it would probably I probably may have never ever switched. But
Right.
I definitely yeah.
I
And
will
I
say
also am a
they're doing
believer
that
in
is by
people
design. They
people
want to sell you another
yeah,
bottle
yeah,
as
yeah,
a
yeah,
fix, right? So they're gonna make you do over nutrient, and then you think,
yeah.
oh, it's my fault. I did something wrong. Maybe I'll go there and get the big bloom, or I'll get whatever the
The
PK
finisher
boost,
product that
the
they sell
finish.
you, that's really just yeah. Anyway, if
They
anybody
also
tells you
just
flush doesn't matter.
sorry.
Hold on, let me just get this out. If anybody tells me
Yeah,
that
go
flush
go
doesn't
go.
matter, I had the first hand experience with the shitty charcoal fucking weed that didn't burn. And I don't care what anybody says. If you use salt-based nutrients, and I would even say if you use minimal, and the way Doc says, it wouldn't hurt to flush the shit out at the end. That's all I'm saying. And I'll stick by that to the day I die. I don't care what any PhD tells me or anybody on Instagram trying to start shit. That's what I know for a fact. All right, I'm done.
I like to recommend flushing at least for a week. I prefer 2 weeks of any salt based, so I'll just say that as well.
Just to touch back on the study, it was 11 days. I just went through and found it in the abstract that it was in week 7 of flower. They cut off fertigation for uh, 11 days, and that is in a 3-gallon pot, which is kind of incredible to hear. But they were testing it 3 times a day, like for water pressure and
And
health and
any
things like that.
pictures of these plants? Do you know what the yield was per plant?
Yeah,
Any
they have it all
indication?
documented and the numbers are all
Okay.
written. It's just it's like one yielded 1,000 grams, the other one was like 900. It was a 12% CBD increase, 13% THC increase. The THCA increase I just read was 43% higher. So it's but that's not meaning like one is 0%, the other one's 43%. That's like saying one is 25%, the other one is 30%, or whatever it is in
And what
this
was
case.
N? What's the sample size? Like how
They have
big
at
of a
least 8 plants in each condition
okay.
that were selected, that were equal height clones, equal health going in, is how they're
Tao,
describing it.
really quick, Tao, when you're talking about flushing, what are you talking about? Are you talking about like 20%, 30% runoff every single time you give it water, or are you talking just like water only with a little bit of runoff for like an extended period of time?
I never did it because by the time I realized it, I went to super soil, but I would do what Grandmaster Level does, man. I would say, like, the day that you were supposed to water it with nutrients, you give it straight water till it comes out the bottom. But I would say you probably want to give it a dry back. Maybe someone else knows better. I would give it a day to dry, and then give it water again and just feed it water until you're done. And yeah, I don't know. If you didn't use heavy nutrients, you shouldn't have to get crazy and do like 5 times the pot worth of water flush through it. I think just
Well,
What
flush
is the
generally,
water.
goal? What should we be looking for or
My,
trying to
my
achieve?
I think what you want to do is allow the soil the soil and the water available to the plant to have less nutrients than the plant has in it already. That would I bet would be the goal.
I think
So
it's
that
more like
so
if you're
that
feeding a nutrient, you can like literally test the runoff and see like
yeah,
it
right.
has, whatever, you can pick a number. It has 700 ppms fucking coming out. And I did a flush and then I tested the next water and it's whatever, pick a number, 300
500, right.
ppm, yeah, 500. And I think you want to shoot for, I'm assuming the lowest number.
It's a combination of things, in my opinion. I think you're right, Tao. I think you just like you said. I don't think you need
Pull it up.
a bunch of water running out the bottom. You might want to have some. I would definitely recommend someone who's using a salt-based system to have water only for the last 10 days, at least. Myself personally, I think it improves the taste. I think it improves the quality. But I also think it helps the plant use the reserves that are built into the actual plant. I think it's more than just the EC and all that stuff. And that's just from being around it for a little while myself. But
Yeah, but
everybody should do what works best for them
Do
and
you
their
think
system
that
and their
For
growth.
starvation is forcing like
just
a
for
senescence?
rounding out the set of opinions, I don't.
he
I
doesn't
think it
believe
hurts
it. Yeah.
yield to cut nutrients off for the last 2 weeks, or really for more than a couple of days. To go to water only is a pretty significant stress on the plant, also that I don't think helps and could increase the risk of hermaphrodism late in the flower cycle. So I specifically would advise against doing what my compatriots, my fellow
There you
growers are
go. This
advising.
is good.
I think it's dangerous, and I don't think you get any benefit. I don't think nutrients will not leave the plant once they're absorbed. You're not like flushing out the plant. The plant takes basically what it needs from the water. What you're going to do is you're going to starve it. You're going to see it in the leaves change. The plant will reposition some mobile
That
nutrients
let,
to
let me
account for
let
that.
me ask you. So I think
Yeah.
by the last week, like I wouldn't say 10 days or 2 weeks, but definitely at least two waterings and whatever.
It
Like
just,
let's
I
say,
don't
let
know
me
what
hold
the
on.
goal that you're trying to accomplish
Right,
is. It's not removing anything from the plant. So if the idea is that
right.
we're getting rid of excess nutrients that were taken up by the plant because we were feeding too much, that's just, we know
All
that's
right,
not
so hold
true.
on.
We know that that
Let
doesn't
me ask
happen.
you two questions. First off, I think
Well,
the yield is already locked in by that. You're not getting much yield in the last week. As far as like
oh,
super
I
growth.
really beg to differ.
All right, but
No,
secondly,
we
let me ask you
are.
this.
Yeah.
If you I know that the shit was no good with too much nutrient, and when you flush it, it alleviates that problem. So what is happening when the shit is over nutriented and it doesn't burn and it's like charcoal and it doesn't even burn no matter what and it's thoroughly dried? Like what is that? Is that nutrient
I
in there? Is
don't
It's
that
think,
definitely nutrient.
not dry the yeah, what is that?
I
What
think
what,
what
causes
Todd's
that?
trying
sorry,
to
say it
say
again. When
is,
it's not over,
What
I think what Todd's
causes
trying to say is look, I grew the plant, flushed it the same plant. I flushed
right.
this, I didn't flush this one. Why was my flushed one better? I think that's just boiled down
Well,
argument.
no, why was my problem with over
Overfed shit is so harsh.
What was the
fertilizing?
problem with the
Like,
fertilized one?
what
Yeah, yeah.
caused the black charcoal buds that didn't burn? What
So the
caused
black
that?
charcoal bud is generally from not properly drying the plant. It is not. I firmly believe that it's a grower myth that it's related to the amount of nutrients in the plant.
Well, I see. I know for a fact it's not though. That's what I'm telling you.
From
Okay.
your firsthand experience, you
Yeah,
feel that when you had one that had too much nutrient, it didn't burn well. But is it possible, potentially,
there was no other
hypothetically,
factor really that
you
could have
dried it
been.
exactly the same way and it was the exact level of dryness, and you're saying that you got let it get bone dry and it still didn't burn well?
Oh yeah, the shit was dry
The
and
level
it got
of
dry.
moisture can also be sort of post dry, but it's often during the dry. To be clear, also, I don't want clear white ash. I think clear white ash comes from over drying cannabis, um, which I can certainly do. I can make any of my plants turn into clear white ash by over drying them. I think if they're properly dried, you have speckled ash. You're not going to have total combustion. And the reason that you don't is because of moisture. If it was phosphates or nitrates, they would burn more, leaving less charcoal residue. If the theory that you're going with is there's more sort of phosphates in that, they're highly combustible, they would not leave sort of darker ash.
The
One thing I've
That
beautiful
makes
also
part about a panel like this is that not everyone has to have the same opinion. I have stated
absolutely.
maybe a dozen times on this show that at over 15 years, I have tried numerous times. And let me tell you something right now. If I flush for 5 days, I can tell a huge difference. But I've been flush, I mean water only for the last 5 days. I can tell a huge difference when if I do it 10. I prefer 14. And I can tell you right now, I've been growing the same strain for 7 years, and I can 1,000% taste the difference. I'm not expecting everybody else to have the same results. I'm just giving you my case on what happens in my grow.
Yeah, and I'm just giving you my case of sort of my experience and knowledge as well. I'm not trying to say
Yeah.
that you're wrong. I'm just trying to say that my knowledge is different.
I think everyone should try growing a plant using twice the recommended dose of fertilizer, drying it out perfectly, and then try and smoke it. That's all I got to say. And I'll end it
You don't
there.
even have to. You can go to the dispensary and buy it from the commercial fuckers who do it already. It burns
Beautiful.
terribly and it smokes like shit because it's often also over dried after it was overfed. And so when you start with garbage and you end with garbage, you're gonna experience garbage. But as a home grower, we can hopefully avoid that. And there's a variety of ways. I know I've smoked doc stuff. It's fantastic. I've smoked Tao stuff and it's fantastic. So I'm sure when I get to smoke Spartan and Noah stuff, it's going to be fantastic too. We've all come to a way to kill it. And I think that I'm glad that we all get to share our different opinions on these subjects. And
Listen, and I don't know how much you guys know about construction, but when you work at when a contractor puts a house up, there's guys that do certain things, and the guy that does electrical is going to be way better at doing electrical, and the guy that's going to do the plumbing is going to be way better at plumbing. If you're really good at growing a certain way, you're probably going to be better at that certain way than someone else. And if someone is growing in a different way, they're going to be better at that way. That's why I always try to say, do what works for best in your grow room with your strains and your setup. But obviously, there's different results and people are welcome to do what works best for them at all times. And I'm not even trying to call anybody out. I'm just telling you what works for me.
no, for sure. And you guys are in different media. So, I mean, it makes sense that what you're going to do is going
Yeah.
to be different. Like Subcool used to say, I flush the entire time. I make a super soil and just give it water the whole fucking time. And that'll work. It does. I've done it. I also think that you can get benefits from using microbes here and there. I think you can get benefits from using Brandon Rust's Microbe Plus product in particular, but also like other ones. Like he has K humate, N humate, whatever, P humate or whatever, the transition. There's all sorts of different options. Now there's BioBiz, and not to be like an exclusive branded chill, but there's BioBiz products. There's other organic products that are like chelated or chelated or however you want to say it, that are
Silver
available immediately.
Jeremy.
And so it doesn't have to necessarily be like this old school way of thinking, like, oh, it's a dry powdered organic thing. It's not going to be available until maybe a week of breaking down or something. Some of it's pretty readily available when it's micronized and pulverized or whatever, but other stuff that's like literally liquid form can kind of break that trend of we used to think organic wasn't able to get it up as quick as possible, but it's catching up. I think, especially with more modern things, and Noah's using some of those things, but it just goes to show that the media makes a huge difference. If you're in a soil or even a hybrid system that's like synganic or organic or modified grow mix, whatever you want to describe it as, maybe living soil beds or whatever it is, that's going to be way different than growing in cocoa for sure. And so I respect everybody's opinion on all this stuff, and it's always fun to hear the different opinions and feedback. To kind of change topic off of the flushing thing, because I think that's a debate that we've had kind of a lot of times throughout history, and back onto the question that was initially asked and followed up with them saying that they noticed different trichome production from run to run, and maybe weighing in maybe a little bit more on that aspect of like in your guys' own grows. No, you just had 7 years on your A runs where you're getting the killer 9.5, 10 out of 10, the best shit. What's that difference? The biggest things that you're seeing between that and when it's not the most killer, like when it's a little step down.
Great question. And let me tell you something right now. When you're gardening, sometimes weird stuff happens. I don't have as much experience as Coco. I have done it, but it's been a long time. But in soil, sometimes weird things will happen. Sometimes your bulbs will be different. Sometimes heat is a huge factor with HPS. I mean, I would imagine with LED it is. So heat will be a huge difference. Just like you said earlier, Jack, that October to December harvest, that's always going to be one of your best runs, in my opinion, especially where I live. So there's a lot of different factors that can go into it. But I personally think that whatever is working best for you, and I learn from each run. So if my last one was better than the run before, I try and just emulate that and learn from different little things. Sometimes you'll make a mistake and maybe you overwatered a plant one time, yeah, you just got lazy, or someone that was working in your room got lazy, or there's things that you can do that will shock or ruin that run. It could be as easy as the size of the plant when you flip it from 12-12. It could be as easy as something like how close is the lights. Like this one plant grew a little bit bigger and you didn't want to pull it down far enough, and so that light was maybe 8 inches away or 12 inches away from it. There's a lot of different factors on whether it's going to be a good run or a bad run. And hey, just always have fun, man. I'm not playing. I love it. I'm out here working right now, transplanting, doing stuff, and that was one of the things I missed when I was out of town. Was working my grow room, and I understand that certain people are going to be looking at things from a commercial standpoint. That's going to be a different standpoint than I am. I'm just trying to make sure that the cannabis that I grow is the best it can possibly be, and I hope everyone else has the same results and has fun doing it.
Heck yeah, man. Did your plant sitters do a good job while you were across the pond?
They did. They're not. Look, there's so many things
Wait a
when you've been
minute, wait
doing
a
it for
minute,
so long.
Noah. I heard
They
that in
stretched
your
a little
voice.
bit. They let it stretch a little bit. They didn't LSD it. They didn't tuck it in the net, so it's stretchy.
Okay.
I'll go live for in a few minutes. I'll show you. But I've had some pretty good stretchy runs too. It affects the yield a little bit, and then of
Yeah.
course it's affecting the bottoms. A great point that was brought up by Dr. MJ was the people that don't trim the bud sites. That's a huge factor. And when I answered the question earlier, I want to say this: strain is obviously probably number one. If
Yeah.
I have a killer strain, you guys have an okay strain, it's going to be pretty easy for me to grow better cannabis, and vice versa. If I have an okay strain, you have a really good one. So, and then it's what are you growing for? Are you going for yield? You're going for, THC. You're going for some type of a really cool head change. You're going for taste. There's just so many levels to it. You know what I mean? It's not as simple as just one thing. You know what I mean? And that's why I always tell everybody, just try and do it what works best for yourself, but also your head. That's the beautiful part about growing cannabis. You can grow what you want for what you want.
Also, your body. I just went and played paintball yesterday with my buddy. He's about to have a kid, so I got him out there in the wild a little bit before he's going to be busy with the infant. But getting shot up by paintballs and sliding around on hard ground and being older than the last time I went was over a decade ago, and I'm definitely feeling very sore today, tying this back to cannabis. And normally when I wake up and smoke, it's just a regular part of my routine. But feeling as sore as I did this morning after fucking diving around and getting shot up a little bit, um, the cannabis helped so much. It was able to do way more than and every other day when I'm not feeling that level of pain, inflammation, etc. But like it's just it was a firm reminder to me that it's a medicine. Like it truly has therapeutic medicinal properties in such a strong, undeniable way. Like I was literally almost like limping around this morning when I woke up. Each hit I took, I felt better and better. And it's not that it made it go completely away. I'm still a little bit sore, but I also, walked a mile. I also did some yoga, and those both I think helped as well. And but the cannabis was, I think, one of the things that allowed me to be able to do it more comfortably and maybe go a little further than I would have if I didn't have some. And it's just always nice to reflect on, man, it's like when you get sick, you realize how much you appreciate being healthy. When you get like injured or in this case, I'm not injured, I'm just a little bit sore. I'm not trying to complain too much. My neck, I might be a little bit sprained, but nothing like horrible, right? But just the amount of quality of life that I was able to improve over like that little half hour of just toking a bong bowl or two, um, was a firm reminder to me that this is a powerful medicine that needs to be spread. And reflecting back to the earlier parts of the conversation and where Tao's even at, there's a lot of people that can't show their face and can't do this publicly and can't do this legally. So it just is a reminder that we've got a long way to come in legislation and pushing for people's rights to grow it, have it, and enjoy it at whatever level they want. I think it's bullshit that like Florida makes them only have like an ounce a month or whatever the fuck it is. They limit people's consumption. And from a medical perspective, as rough as I was feeling this morning, I'd be feeling really shitty at the government if they were trying to tell me how much I could consume, can consume. And I would be a conscientious objector or, civil disobey those laws if I was in one of those situations and try and get my hands on as much good cannabis as I could grow or source from my gromies as possible because you got to take care of yourself. And I think that's one of the great tools for doing it. I know Spartan for a long time was a caregiver, so you don't need to be reminded of the medical benefits as you've seen firsthand. And I think anybody who's worked as a delivery service person, going door to door and seeing from the old grandma and grandpa to the young kid to the whoever and everyone in between, it's just a reminder that like I don't know, it's powerful.
Those are the ones that affect me the most is the young kids, to be honest with you. Those ones are just like, God, what the hell? They do deserve to have to deal with this kind of a load at this early of an age. It's terrible.
Life can be tough, but
Mhm.
I'm glad that it's an option for people to manage a lot of different things, from physical pains to sometimes cognitive ones, and lots of in-betweens. But yeah, I think it's valuable, and I'm so happy to see it continue to get more widely studied, especially for like I know a lot of veterans personally who use it and seem to benefit a lot from it. And for a long time, it was something that they could like lose benefits over, and now it's not so much that way. So I'm happy to see that shift, but still more work to be done. And yeah, I just wish that we were. I think with the Schedule 3, hopefully that will be something that we get a lot more research on, like good studies on veterans and other people with PTSD and how cannabis can benefit and can also potentially, warning label like don't maybe use THCV or don't maybe use certain ones that might make you more triggered or more anxious or more, uncomfortable.
Yeah, I
And
hope
there are
this
certain
gets
terpene
this.
profiles that work great, and there's certain ones that don't work as well. So I think that's worth considering. It's not like a silver bullet cure all for all veterans all the time. We got to find the stuff that works the best and try and blend and formulate and breed to the best benefit of those people, I think, and even ourselves if you're experiencing those things.
I think that's, I mean, I don't know. I'm biased, of course, but people complain to me about most any ailment. I'm like, have you heard about cannabis? Hold on, let me do a search. I'm sure it probably helps.
There are a lot of things that it touches on, and interestingly, I just found out CBD operates on the same endocannabinoid system as uh, coffee. And the adenosine receptors are impacted by the CB2 system. And
Okay.
adenosine is the thing that kind of gives you that sleep signal, it kind of makes you start feeling drowsy. And coffee blocks that to make you more energized. CBD interacts with it in a different way, but it can help people with, like, for example, like the jitters. It just helps regulate the CB2 receptors and CB2 system and everyone's endocannabinoid system. We have all got them, or even cats and dogs and stuff have them. So it's interesting to see how these things interplay. And
Yeah, I wonder if coffee then would block the absorption of CBD. Would it bind to those receptors and essentially take up those keyholes so that the CBD couldn't? And then
I
thereby,
think it was the fact that CBD made like more of the action happen, even though coffee was trying to block it up. It made
uh-huh.
like more sites available or something like that. I
Oh,
could be
more
misremembering.
receptors appear. Okay.
So it could have like maybe unblocked in certain ways, or it gets complicated when you get into like the neuroscience of it all, the brain chemistry, what's going on in the synapses of the brain and things like that. But
I don't know, but I like them together. I'll tell you that. Coffee and cannabis go good together.
I
I
think so
prefer
as
to
well.
say coffee and caffeine is what I prefer to say because I don't like coffee. I'll
Yeah,
drink
If
like
you're
a
a tea
monster.
person, that's fine too. But
there you go.
I'll drink tea. Yeah.
Tea has more caffeine.
Oh,
Doc, you're muted, I
you
think.
muted, Doc.
I'm muted. I was trying to say that most of the impact or most of the high that we get is from the CB1 receptor, right? So how it affects the
CB1, CB
CB2.
fun, THC.
Right, exactly. So you may be getting that still the THC effect, right? Even if you're not getting whatever CBD effect or the CBD effect may have been mitigated by the presence of caffeine.
Yeah, which I think was interesting. I don't want to get too far off topic, but man, I just want to throw it out there again because I have to say it a million times and it's always a surprise. And it was a surprise to me when I learned it. But when people take, because I see all these goddamn CBD companies that sell like 5 milligrams of CBD in a gummy or 10 milligrams of CBD in a gummy. And I'm like, that will do absolutely jack shit. People that
Awesome.
eat them are swearing that it'll happen. I'm like, that's placebo as hell because every white paper I've ever seen on CBD studies, CBD doses are like ungodly high. They're not
Thousand.
if they're not in
Yeah.
1,000, they're like the high hundreds, like 400
Mhm.
milligrams to help with sleep and inflammation and things like that. So it's just, I mean, I don't know unless if somebody's out there who has a white paper that for me to read that says differently, but I think it's
The
just pure
placebo
marketing.
effect is one of the strongest effects in science, Spartan Grown. Do you know
Yeah,
how hard it
I
is to
know.
overcome the placebo effect for a drug to actually be approved and overcome the placebo? I'm not even actually joking about this. People so firmly believe if a doctor hands them a pill and says this will
Yeah.
make you better, we are psychologically conditioned to believe people in lab coats. They went through a lot of training. Why would they fuck with us, right? Why would I be the one that gets randomly assigned in the study to not get the actual medicine? And so you start feeling better. And then the mind goes with the body and the body goes with the mind. So I
That
think
shit would never work with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so pessimistic. I would just be like, okay, if I don't have any side effects, I'm obviously the placebo.
I'll never take that pill.
the cannabis studies are always like the funny ones, but because it's like you're vaping or something like that. And like obviously like you're inhaling. I guess they have like simulated cannabis or some artificial thing to inhale, but
I'm
uh
gonna figure out pretty quickly that I didn't get the real cannabis. I'm gonna be like so pissed. I'm like, I gotta vape the rest of this bullshit. Like, what the hell?
it's a fucking ground up
The funny
lavender
thing
and
is it will be the real cannabis, but it'll be the government's cannabis, and it'll be such dog shit that it doesn't look like
you don't even
cannabis.
recognize it as cannabis. You're like, I must have been the placebo condition. Secretly, they gave
Yeah.
you that dog shit garbage that they put into those giant tins of pre-rolls that I don't know if there's anybody still alive getting them, but there's people out there from the government from like some 1970 study or something like that where they got pre-rolls for life and they get these big giant tins. So they get to smoke like every month or something like that. And it's pretty crazy. I've seen a few of them documented. I'm not sure if they're still kicking around, but those videos are memorable for sure. Looking at these folks pulling out a big silver, basically like cookie tin of joints,
Yeah, joints, bro. Like the shittiest weed ever created by man.
like ground sweepings of the worst grow is what it looked like. The bud was just like, and it was stuffed like end to end, like fully stuffed. Like the joints were like up top. You get to see like the little green top as they peeled it open. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's a sign of a different time. And hopefully we'll have more and better research on that. I know some facilities have done a lot of good testing in modern times on cannabis consumption and things like that. One of the things I wanted to mention earlier, we were talking about flushing, and I don't want to get back into that debate, but just in terms of lighters, the this style with flint wheel, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but if you're flicking that over top of your bowl, or if you're doing that underneath your joint a bunch of times, and then you start taking some pulls on that joint and you see a spark go off, it might not be that extra fertilizer was in that plant. It might be that you put a bunch of flint powder and dust and micro dust onto your bowl or onto your joint with the flicking of these. And so the little electronic start style like this, I'm not sponsored. You can get these cheap things fucking anywhere and refill them.
Right.
That's the other thing I like is they're easily refillable on the bottom. Unlike this one, which you have to kind of do a lot of random shit. And you can see that's a weed smoking lighter right there because it's putting out some cheering bowls on occasion. But yeah, I think that was just something that came to my mind that I didn't mention earlier that I've felt and thought in the past, like when I see a joint look like a sparkler going off, I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck's going on? Like, was there too much phosphorus or something in this? But I think usually it's a condition of people trying to light a joint in the wind. So they're like flicking that thing over and over and over and over and over. So flick, 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 and it finally fucking lights and they get it started. And then when you start pulling on it and you hit that big chunk of flint dust, you have a little bit of a sparkler effect, which can kind of shock and awe for the people around. But I've also seen like back in the seed and stem days, uh, a seed in a joint that would literally blow up and explode in the middle of the joint because somebody didn't pick it out. So that's never fun. So be careful if you
They
have
turn
seeds.
into little blow torches, right? They get their little flames shooting out of the seed. Yeah, yeah, good times.
And then it pops. It's like, oh fuck, a little bomb went off in your joint.
I want to make one more comment on this whole flush thing too, because I think we're coming from different sort of starting points with some of the people in chat in particular. Like, I don't over fertilize my plants. I'm really going in like maximum of 1200 EC. You may be thinking of growers that are pushing bloom boosters and going in at like 2000, 3000, 4000 EC. I also agree that their plants would benefit by some plain water watering at that point because they're ridiculously overwatering their plants. So maybe the reason that we think that they'd benefit from that watering is different, but there's still like plenty. If you're not actually doing a flush and just like actually doing a flush, I believe that the definition in like horticulture is at least a container volume worth of water. So if you're just plain because you're flushing, like the idea of a real flush when you're trying to like break lockout or something, if you've got really negative condition in the root zone, you want to push all the water out. If you're just giving this basically the same amount of water as you've always been given, but it's just less, then the water's just kind of moving down the water column. There's still water down at the bottom there that has nutrients in it. So that's maybe a different thing too. But I'm thinking more in terms of some of the comments in chat than in Noah's experience in particular. But I also hope Noah doesn't feel like I was in any way calling him out in particular. We have different styles and different ideas, and that's a beautiful thing.
No, no ill will taken. I love the challenge. I love the grow. I love to learn. And I would encourage anyone who always flushes to try Dr. MJ's way. Do one plant, not doing it. And anybody who's doing my way, or doing the opposite, just experiment with the other way. Do what works for you. If not, flushing is the best thing for your grow room and your strains and your lighting setup and your everything, do it. But if not flushing is, don't just let some guys on a podcast or whatever tell you what to do. Experiment and find what works best for you. And that's the whole experience about growing is that you can do those things. And if you want to have a little bit better yield, maybe that'll work. I will admit that my last grow was a little bit less yield than I'm used to. And I wonder if maybe I should try experiment. I would always try to be humble and I always want to learn. And I've learned a lot from you guys over the years.
I've tried a lot of stuff just like you guys mentioned from this show, and I think it's made me a better grower, like a little dialed things in here and there.
Absolutely, me too.
And so I
Absolutely.
think it's like as iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man. The whole coming together of minds here, we're trying to all get a little bit better together. Except for Tao, he's already perfect when he shows up, so he doesn't have to actually improve. He's just improving all of us. So I'll just make that little caveat for everybody out there.
He's the whetstone.
Thank you.
He's the one that's keeping Saul sharp.
Exactly.
I did have one comment, Jack, about this question that we were engaged in, like what separate, and I don't know if we're still engaged in this or not.
Yeah, no,
but
it's always we can bounce back to whatever, and I think it's a good topic.
what separates like your best harvest from your like not as good harvest? As a home grower, I would always say the season that it's harvested in. My December harvest was always the best harvest. The April harvest was sort of the second best harvest. And the July harvest was it's usually not a very good harvest. And most of that isn't even because of the climate during the grow, but it's the climate during the dry and sort of the struggle with achieving the best drying conditions, but also growing conditions. If you don't have the horsepower to throw at climate control and you're in a hotter environment, it's just tough to keep the numbers dialed in. Outside of that, though, I really tried for consistency, but I did want to think about seasonality as a home grower is something you have to like even plan for skipping the summer if you can't control the heat. Um, Planting a crop right about now in mid-August is a great strategy because that's when you'll be harvesting November, December. Um, so thinking through along those terms, I think helps a lot, set you up for success.
It's a good point. And run to run, something that might impact quality and yield. That this is going to be a tip for Noah the grower. I know he's open-minded. Maybe he already did, so this might not be it. But I remember when I was under HPS, when you swapped that new bulb, that was always a great harvest. That first grow,
Yeah.
that fresh HPS is different than one that's been running for 6 months or that one that's been running for a year. So if the yield's dropping off, if that's part of the equation, that might be worth considering swapping out for a new bulb. So I'm curious.
No, you're definitely right about that. That's a one thing I overlooked, and I actually always switch my bulbs around March, April, and I definitely noticed a difference in both the yield, and I also noticed that I was the light the grow before that I was trying to get, I was subconsciously trying to get closer to the lights to do that. And then the next run, I got a little bit of bleaching on the top because I was getting it a little too close. So yeah, the new bulbs is definitely a factor, and always you're going to have a great harvest. Great point, Jack.
It is one of those things that's easy to overlook and it's an expense. So it's like as a cheap home grower, it's like, can I push it another run? And I think Smiley's Garden pointed out that when he did not replace it, and he was a caregiver in the Michigan market, and he pointed out, I think if he didn't swap the lights like every 6 months or maybe every run, even that he would see like several ounces falling off of each one of the successive harvests with the same exact clone. So it literally paid for it to pay for that bulb because he was getting that amount back in yield and product and ultimately more medicine for the people that he was caregiving for as well.
I was just going to say that's what I was going to say about one of the best harvests. It has to do with the outside of full time indoor crops. Way better comes out, and it's probably exactly right because of the dry. But also, there was a couple there that when I had male plants and they were in there, and I just ripped out the male plant and put a female plant in its place. Like whatever roots left, because it was pretty early on in its life when I figured it was a female. But no, the female plant did kill her, dude. It actually did kill her after I ripped out the male, replaced put the female in there.
I've heard a similar thing about the plants. The female plants can sense if there's a male around or in the room, and that they'll flower even harder if there's a male around.
Oh, I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think it's because like the roots from the male plant
Easy
already
rousing
were
them.
exuding beneficial shit into the roots into the soil already, and once the female plant took hold of it, it just like it was already the
Oh,
soil
that
was
you
already
planted
ready.
it back in the same pot?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
I just
interesting.
pulled out the male plant and I just put the female plant. Yeah, a 1 gallon plant in the 5
How
gallon
many weeks
container.
in
It
when
was
you did
only
it?
like a week in flower because as soon as I found out it was a boy, I ripped it
So your
out.
soil needs 1 week of less nutrients. That's what you found out, I think.
Or no, or yeah, like back then, like I used to say all the time, my plant probably made friends with the soil because like sometimes when I would transplant it first, it would be a little time out. But yeah, the plant has an incredible ability to influence the pH and a lot of things inside the soil. But if the plant already did that, if there was something growing there already, the soil is already ready for something. That's kind of like why living soil with cover crops and shit. That's supposedly one of the advantages. It already has the network of soil nutrient cycling. But yeah, I'm just saying that it was one of the easiest ones. I did it, and the thing just took off right away. So I don't know if it had anything to do with anything, but
It's always interesting to document those sort of oddities, I guess, or positives when they do happen. Like we were talking about what makes something better from one run to the next. And it could be the soil microbiome, it could be the nutrient load, it could be a whole lot of things. Maybe it was at the perfect
oh
spot in the grow room. I think sometimes that's the thing. It's like, oh, if you're
yeah,
back in the day, especially like a lot of lights were not perfectly uniform bar lights. So like you had cobs or a lot of the high intensity discharge lights, which have maybe a center point where there's maybe too much light in one area, optimal light in one area, and then not enough light in one area for a lot of lights. So you'd have like one plant might be looking top shelf, and then the other one's looking kind of B grade, and then you got your like larfy little low yielders off in the corner that are barely getting any light. So getting that ideal light spread evenly across the canopy, however you do it. I mean, I've seen some amazing mixed light greenhouses that put out some fucking incredible quality product that you would think was indoor. People actually sell it as indoor a lot of the times because in the unregulated markets, not to say that it's ethical, but it looks and smells and tastes as good as something you would expect indoor. When you're climate controlling and providing enough PPFD to the plants, they turn out looking fantastic. We lost Noah again. He bounced in and bounced out. Hopefully he'll get to come back because we're about to do our final thoughts and shout outs since there are at least four of us on the panel. I'll pass it first to Dr. MJ for final thoughts and shout outs before we wrap it up.
Yeah, this show went really quickly. I like the shows that sort of fly by. So it was fun. I enjoyed talking about all the various topics and getting into the weeds, as it were, with the fellow panelists. So appreciate Noah. Hope he's back in time to hear that. Tao, Spartan, Jack, of course, you do a wonderful job sort of hosting us here. So thank you for being here every week. Chat, you guys are awesome. Thanks for showing up and supporting the show. I'm Dr. MJ Coco. Visit cocoforcannabis.com for all your information on home growing. And if you're a commercial grower and you're interested in my services, check out drmjcoco.com. Look forward to being back next week.
Great having you as always. And next up, I'm going to pass it to Noah the Grower. Hopefully he doesn't drop out here while we get his final thoughts and shout outs before we close it down.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but yeah, thank you very much. I always learn a lot from you guys. I always have a blast. It's a great hang. I hope everyone who's listening to the show is having fun growing. And if you grew a bad harvest last time, don't worry about it. Your next harvest is going to be better. Just keep growing. You're going to have fun and you're going to learn and you're going to have a great time. And the plant will reward you. No other grow on Instagram. Find me there, and I'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely. I've couldn't agree more with that. If you didn't do better than your last run, ideally you learn something. And if you haven't yet, look back on it and examine what might have went wrong. Maybe it was just the weather was outside of your control. You don't have the investment into climate control during the summertime. So you were kicking yourself in the butt saying, "Oh man, I just suck at growing. My first grow was amazing and now my second grow sucked." And you're like, "Oh, Dr. MJ was just saying that his summer grows were always the roughest ones and that was my summer grow. So maybe I should give myself a little bit of a, you know, pat on the back and be like, hey, it's fine. I'm not that bad, actually. I can make it up in the fall and winter harvests because you keep growing. That's the whole point. Keep on the horse and keep at it. So, as you know, many of us always preach, yeah, keep growing, and then you get that second shot. You get to go up to bat again and grow again, and potentially do even better than you've ever done before. Putting all of the stuff together that you've learned from the good grows and the bad. I feel like in sports or in life, sometimes you learn more in the difficult times, the losses, the down times than you do when things are just going smooth. So try and learn as much as we can from the not so good times, even if it's a bad grow. So cheers to that, Noah. And next up, we've got Spartan Grown.
Thank you, Jack, for hosting, of course, every week, and all the panel members. It's always a good show. I love it when we have a lot of people on because it's great to having like the back and forth and everything. I love it. And all the perspectives because we can all grow from that. And of course, chat, right? Shout out to chat out there giving the good questions. This was a show where they gave us a lot of good questions. There's been a lot of these shows where they didn't really dump us with a lot of questions and we just went our own way. So this was cool to kind of steer us a little bit. Thank you, chat. But other than that, I'm just, you guys said it so well. I don't have anything else other to add than that. Just keep growing. Much love.
Good stuff. Always great to have you, Spartan. And one of my favorite quotes is if you ask 10 different growers, you'll get 11 different opinions. And I'll make up for that guy who probably gives you two different opinions because sometimes I can't make up my own mind or sometimes it is situational. So you ask a question, but I'll usually follow up with another question because I want to know about your environment, about your nutrient, about your media, about your lighting, about everything before I start just firing off a direct answer in a lot of circumstances. So that's worth considering for sure. And last and certainly not least of my panelists this evening is the American one.
Jack, as always, thanks for hosting. Good to see everyone on panel. It was a great one. Time flew by. I love when it is like just goes by effortlessly. Good to see everyone in chat. And shout out to everyone, man. Have a great week, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.
Cheers, Tal. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for the questions this week. Even if it's just a couple, I think it's fun to bounce back and forth on our own random topics, updates, etc. But it's always nice when we do have a couple questions. And I think I love when we have a follow-up. That person hung with us live. I made him wait a little bit. So thank you to the person asking the questions earlier. I think it was Adam the Grower. Yeah, it was Adam the Grow. Yeah, Adam the Grower. Great questions and follow-ups. That really helps because, like I was saying earlier, sometimes we're not just going to give a direct answer. We might give context, and then you'll be able to say, oh, what about this as well? And it gave us a whole second sort of subject to go on about. And like others on the panel said, it's really fun when we've got a group like this because we all have different opinions. And like I said, the whole 10 different growers, 11 different opinions, while it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek joke, it just shows that there's 100 different ways or 1,000 different ways to do it. We're not all going to do it the same way. And we can get to a harvest at the end of the day and still have good cannabis. And we're kind of generally going to find the similar environments, similar things like that. However, everybody can have their own little unique spin on it. You can make it feel a little bit your own, and you can have your own connection with that plant and make it special in your own way. And every grow I look at, I see a little difference. So even if somebody steals your photos, I'm gonna be like, wait, I know that grow. That's Spartan Grown's grow or whatever. I don't even need to see the name or whatever. Sometimes I could just be like, oh, I recognize that city picker. I recognize those plants that they're tagging or whatever. So it's like, oh, this is a fake account. So be aware of that kind of stuff. Hopefully there's not any of me, but I don't think so. I'm not that big or important. I'm at Jack Greenstock. Jack_Greenstock is my backup account and my account on X, where I'll be posting this tomorrow, ideally, maybe Tuesday at the latest, and on all the podcast platforms. So thank you all for listening. Keep on growing, and cheers, everybody.
Grower love, everyone.